We're going to hear next from Erica Bergfeld-Reed. Did I say it right? I had a hard time spelling your last name, and I don't know why. It's not hard, except for as soon as I figured out it's all E's like Erica, then I was like, oh, this is easy. Because I was trying to put other vowels in there. I've had the honor to hear Erica speak a couple of different times, and she has one of those stories that you're just like, how are you waking up the next day when you're going through so much between cancer and losing your parents and a multitude of other things? And then you spend any amount of time with her and you're like, wow, there you are, just showing us all that you can keep going even when life feels like it is really kicking you in the ass. So I want to introduce Erica Bergfeld-Reed to the stage. And you don't need this, right?
I do not need that, thank you. Well, first, thank you for allowing me to be up here amongst such amazing women. I have truly been inspired all day and just am grateful to be here. So, as she said, my name's Erica, and I am here to share with you about how the last few years, which I would tell you is the hardest years of my life, have taught me how you respond matters. Asking for help is a strength, not a weakness. And curveballs, I think they can be turned into disco balls. So on April 12th, 2022, almost actually 3 years to today, I walked out of my first mammogram and ultrasound knowing I had breast cancer. I was 38 years old. I had found a spot during a self-exam and talked to my primary about it. I didn't have any breast cancer history in my family, so honestly, I wasn't concerned. And I didn't know that having a mammogram and an ultrasound at the same appointment was probably not a good sign. And the ultrasound techs couldn't actually tell me anything, right? But I saw what they saw. You guys, they found spots on my right side, my left side, and all over my lymph nodes. I could read the vibe in the room, and I knew instantly I had breast cancer. The next step was actually to get the biopsy to confirm that. I was getting ahead of myself, I realized, but how would you not? I was shocked, I was terrified, I cried. They were making sure I was okay before I even left the exam room, right? And instead of going home to talk to my husband or maybe calling a friend, I went to work, because quite honestly, I wasn't gonna deal with it, I didn't believe it, and I wanted to still have control over things. So that news itself is pretty big, right? But I'm gonna share a few other significant life events that have happened to me that make this even more surreal. See, the age of 38 is important to know because my mom had died at the age of 38 after fighting cancer for 5 years. So I was now the same age of getting a diagnosis that I watched my mom die. She battled cancer for 5 years. It was colon cancer. It's an unreal time in your life to lose a mother. Then when I was 17, the boyfriend who was with me when I lost my mom was tragically killed in a car accident. To say I had to grow up at a really young age, it's an understatement at this point. I had experienced extreme loss at such a young age. I learned that the world didn't stop moving for me to be sad though, right? It kept going like a freight train. Looking back, I probably should have gotten some therapy. But it wasn't what you did back then, right? It wasn't talked about, it wasn't presented to me. So life was hard, you gotta keep going, don't get knocked down. Walls. I wish I could tell you that was the end, but there's even more now to my story. When I was 20 and I was a freshman in college, I got the news that my dad had lung cancer. He was given 6 months to live. They called me one night when I was in college to tell me he had pneumonia and he wasn't going to make it through the night. So I freaked out, right? I drove home to be with him. And I sat in the hospital room talking with my father at the age of 20 about what it would mean for legal guardianship of my brother, because he was younger, what it would mean to be an orphan at the age of 20, and then additionally whether I would have to drop out of school or I would stay in college and what that would look like. I'm not sure how many 20-year-olds, and I hope not many, have to have those kind of conversations, right? Sitting in a hospital room. Once again, I was being forced to grow up very quickly. You could see a pattern, right? 15, 17, 20. I will say, though, my dad was a huge fighter, and he survived that. So then when I was 22, graduating college, I moved to Cedar Rapids with an ex-boyfriend. And honestly, I was so fueled with hope and joy and faith that I could leave that behind. See, when I crossed the Illinois-Iowa border to move here, that baggage was staying back in Illinois, right? Like, no thank you, didn't pack it in the car, okay? We dated for a few years once I was here, but unfortunately, we made the choice to go separate ways, just different paths in our lives. But I'll never forget the day or where I was when he called to tell me he had pancreatic and liver cancer, and at the age of 29, he passed away. You guys, this wasn't supposed to follow me, right? This was supposed to stay in Illinois. I had endured enough. But here I was, and now it was in Iowa with me. I felt so haunted, like it's gotta be me, right? Like it's happened across state lines, it's happened in all phases of my life, it's happened with family, it's happened with boyfriends. Believe me, nobody wanted to date me. Okay? It seemed like I was constantly losing or close to losing the people that I let in and were close to me, and that meant a lot to me. So you could see how those walls went up, right? You could see how I kept people this far away. Because if you got close to me, again, I was haunted. Bad things were about to happen. I wasn't enjoying life. I didn't let the people in. And honestly, I didn't think the world cared about me. So I'm going to bring you back now to April of 2022 when I walked out of that exam room. You can see how that moment crumbled me. I didn't know what to do, right? I was angry, I was sad, it was PTSD, it was everything. I will say though, between losing my ex in 2022, I maybe had let those walls just slightly, just a smidge come down. But instantly, that day, right back up and probably harder and higher than ever, right? I didn't realize though, from that day on, the next few years of my life were gonna require more of me than anything I'd ever done before, both physically and mentally. I had to find new ways to be resilient, and probably resilient in a healthier way than I had done before. It was confirmed after that biopsy I was waiting for, that I had HER2 positive, stage 2B, aggressive growing cancer in my left side. I wasn't even old enough for a mammogram. I didn't have family history. With my type of cancer, I had to dive right into weekly chemo treatments. So I did 12 weeks of weekly chemo. They ranged anywhere from 3.5 hours to 6 hours every Wednesday, so it was also midweek. I timed it that way, so I'd feel good for a couple days and I could feel really shitty on the weekends. I'm sorry if I can't say that. Also, they give you a list when you start chemo if you've not been with somebody with this, but here's side effects you should expect, and here's one like some people get. Yep, they just served them all to me on a platter. For me, chemo was the gift that kept giving. Still, 3 years later, have side effects. But chemo fog was a real thing. I know we joke about menopause fog, but chemo fog also is a real thing. I couldn't stay organized. I couldn't process information. I felt like everything was just a haze. My friends during those times, if you told me something, I just couldn't remember it. I had really bad digestive problems. We'll leave that aside. 24/7 nausea, fatigue. I mean, I expected to be tired, right? I couldn't even get off the couch some days. Like, there was moments my husband literally had to help me get up. All my fingernails fell off, every single one of them. My toenails, horrible problems. I developed a blood clot that we only found after I flew to Wyoming with some friends and hiked. Because I didn't feel good during that time, I came back and I was like, what's up? I don't feel good. And they're like, well, you have a blood clot. And the doctors, they'll tell you it was a rash, but it was the worst acne ever. It was all over my face. You touched my face and I would bleed. Like, it was horrible. So you could see like all that on top of each other. I did finish my 12 rounds of chemo in July of 2022. I had a double mastectomy in October that year. It got delayed because of the blood clot. Thank you. But unfortunately, during that surgery and my double mastectomy, they found that I actually still had cancer in one of my lymph nodes. So that meant I was going into another year of chemo, in addition to the radiation. And in addition, I elected to go into a chemo trial. It was a pill, 50-50 chance if I'd be on medication or not. And within 30 minutes of taking it, I knew I was on the medication. So I know I've shared a lot of heavy things, right? These have been giant curveballs that I have navigated in my life. And here's the thing, we all have curveballs that come at us, right? These have been the big ones in my life. I've also had the small ones, the medium ones, maybe the slow pitch ones that come in, as we all have sitting in this room. So I'm gonna share with you, though, how I've navigated those and how I've really tried to turn some of those curveballs into disco balls. So one of the first things I had to do, ladies, I had to get my head in the game. And this looked different for me in different situations. So with my diagnosis, it meant every morning showing up and reminding myself that I can do the hard things. Now that sounds cliche, but every one of us in this room have survived 100% of our worst days. We all have a great track record, right? So I had to lean into that. And on the days that I felt good, I did the things, right? And then the days I didn't, I had to let go of that control and that feeling of failure. There were days that I was out doing things. I actually was a little concerned at one point. I talked to my doctors, like, should I be doing this much? Yeah, if you feel good, go. I had to let go of this idea that my husband didn't do the dirty dishes every day, and there was dirty dishes in my sink, and I couldn't do them. I had to cancel on friends. I appreciate their grace in that because I didn't feel good. And honestly, I had to learn how to cry and process that. It wasn't easy, and I knew in my heart that how I showed up for myself every day mattered. Some days that was a lot harder than others. Another area I'd like to talk to you about is how I navigated some physical changes. So I've had 8 surgeries over the last 3 years. My most recent one was about 6 weeks ago. I had a full hysterectomy. Those surgeries were anywhere from a port coming into my chest for chemo infusions to being cut 27 inches across my abdomen for reconstruction surgery. That's a lot of change to your body in a very short amount of time. On top of that, I'm postmenopausal. I had to figure out a way to tell you guys that because we've talked about menopause so much today. But on top of that, they pushed me into menopause, right? So I've done a lot of reflecting and navigating on my body and the physical changes you endure. And I've had to give grace and forgiveness to my body. It looks a lot different than what it did 3 years ago. Some things are good, some things are not, and I'm still navigating this. But when I got my diagnosis, I was pissed at my body. We ate well. I was training for a half marathon. Like, I ran a half marathon between my diagnosis and my first chemo. I was at CrossFit. I thought I was doing the right things. I had the colonoscopies. My mom had colon cancer, right? I was doing those things. Heck, I did my preventative exams. That's how I found it. But for some reason, I don't know why, I got breast cancer. I had genetic counseling and testing done through the diagnosis, and I have no genetic disorders from my parents. So in one sense, that's great, right? But on the other sense, it gave me no understanding of why it happened to me. So I've really had to work at this. As women, it's really hard to do to navigate these shifts in your bodies. I didn't have a choice. It wasn't a gradual thing. So I have learned to love my body. I loved it for what it was able to do before it gave me cancer. But honestly, I loved it even more for what it was doing when it was fighting like hell through those treatments. And it gave me a new sense of love that I now carry with me every day. Let me tell you the way this looked. So I was very active going into treatments, and the first couple were fine. I kept up with things, and then it started to get harder because it builds in your system. So I couldn't keep up at the gym anymore, and instantly in my head, that's a failure, right? But I really dug in, and with the help of some good coaches at the time, I had to think about how my body was fighting to live because we were pumping poison to it every day to kill the cancer, but I was still able to do exercise. There were days I had chemo, those Wednesdays I had chemo, and I'd go to the gym that afternoon. But in my defense, I got steroids at chemo, and so I felt really pumped up those days. So I went, right? I took advantage of that, though. I wanted to show up and be there, so I went. And then there were days where I just flat out couldn't go. There were days that I could go, and that's really what I did. I just showed up, right? I couldn't push as hard. I couldn't keep up with the others in the class. I couldn't lift as much, obviously, but I did it. And that's all I had in me at the time, right? So take advantage of those moments. I had to give myself that. Physical activity was an outlet for me, and I needed to keep that in my world. I was able to do CrossFit for almost 10 months after my diagnosis, but ultimately I did have to leave. That chemo trial pill, it kicked my butt. But I'm proud to stand here today and tell you for the last 3 years, I have stayed active through all the treatments in one way or the other. It looks a lot different. This morning, I was on a treadmill with a weighted vest, doing weighted vest for bone density. If you're not doing it, do it. I'm not as physically fit as I once was. You know, I have scars all over my body now that I never had. My arms are really flabby, which bothers me. I couldn't run a mile now if you wanted me to. But you know what? My body has fought like hell, and I'm going to love it for standing here today and allowing me to experience life. All right, I have another good story. After my third chemo session, at the time, seemed like the hardest part of it all. I mean, not just the diagnosis, but after this third chemo session, my hair started to fall out. Okay, I knew it was coming. They tell you, right? Like, they tell you strategies to help with it. I had really long, naturally blonde, curly hair. And on June 4th that year, I knew I needed to shave my head, so I had some friends. They were going to come over. We were going to have fun with it. And an hour before, I texted them, and I said, abort mission. I can't do this. I can't let you see me vulnerable. I don't know how to navigate this. So on top of the acne, no fingernails, now I'm going to be bald. Like, how do you go out into the world like that? But those people showed up for me. We had a blast. If anyone wants to see pictures, I shaved my head and all kinds of different things, a mullet, mohawk, I mean, everything, right? I shaved my husband's head. We had a great time with it, honestly. But here's the thing. In the moment, that felt like the hardest thing. It was the biggest thing for me to tackle. Now that I'm out of it, right, and I can look back, it was such a blessing. As my hair began to grow back, and I didn't lose my hair with the second round of chemo, just the first round, so I've been growing it back for some time. I found some pictures. I went to my hairstylist, and I said, hey, this singer Pink, like, I kind of like her. Can we make it look like this a little bit? And guess what? I've kept it for 2 years. And I feel like it highlights my personality. I get to wear fun, funky earrings all the time. I have more confidence with it. And I get told I look like Pink, which actually I really love. And I feel like it's a huge booster. I just want to be acrobatic like her. I actually got to see her in concert twice last fall. So it was pretty cool and pretty surreal for me there. So those are just a couple ways that I've built resiliency through some physical changes. But one of the biggest mental ones for me was this idea of letting people in to help me. This was hard. Remember back to my curveballs, right? I built those walls. I didn't let people in because if you got close to me, I was haunted and like you should have a life insurance policy. So when I first introduced to the world, I posted on Facebook really, and I shared with the world that I had breast cancer. I wasn't going to be shy about it, to be honest. I had an army show up. It was overwhelming. In fact, some of them are here today cheering me on still. The cancer news was overwhelming. My husband and I, we lost sleep, as you can imagine with anything that happens like that in your world, right? And I'm a planner, and I like to have control. And so I was actually like, well, here's when I'm going to start chemo. Here's when I'm going to do my surgery. I hadn't even met with the doctors yet. And I was going to tell them at my first appointment how this is going to roll. You can imagine that's not how it actually worked. So anyways, we knew the news was overwhelming, but the amount of appointments you were tossed into instantly. Until this last February, so almost 3 years, I have been at Halpern Cancer Center almost every 3 weeks, if not more. So it's overwhelming, right? Between navigating work and changes like that, and how do you get yourself there and the information, and I'd watched my dad take care of my mom, the community support we had during that time. I'd watched my dad navigate his own diagnosis. I just knew we couldn't do this alone, and honestly, we didn't want to. COVID was like just a few years ago, and that was a lot of alone time. So we needed our friends and our networks to show up more than we had ever done. We don't have family in the area. I never once thought I wasn't going to beat this, but we didn't know how we'd do it ourselves. So now more than ever, I needed to let go of control, let the people be there. And the biggest part, though, is I had to let them in my vulnerable moments. I had to let them see the ugly side of things. So with the help of my therapist, I did finally get that therapy I needed 25 years ago. She offered and helped me see some ways that by allowing others in, it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength, and it doesn't mean I'm letting go of all the control. So again, grace and forgiveness and showing up for myself, meaning I needed to allow help in. So here's one way that looked for me. I had weekly chemo appointments, like I said, the first 12 weeks. At first, I was like, I'll drive myself there, and people were like, I'll be your chemo buddy. Who wants to be a chemo buddy? Who wants to go sit in a chemo infusion room with you for hours on a Wednesday? But yet, I was once again reminded, maybe Erica, just take a breath and see if it works. So my husband went to the first 2 chemos with me just to experience it. And then I put a sign-up genius together because I like to have control and be organized. And so I sent it out, and I was like, man, these people, they're crazy. Maybe 1 or 2 will fill up. And you guys, within an hour, the 10 appointments were filled. An hour, and I had all 10 appointments filled. These individuals picked me up from my house, they took me to the treatment, they hung out with me, and then they drove me back home. And logistically, it took so much off my husband. He didn't have to do that every day for me, right? Every week. He got to stay at work, which sounds crazy, but I needed him to have a break from this. Because those days where I came home and I felt really crummy, he was gonna have to be there. But the even better and more important thing is it gave me time and the quality time with those people I love in my most vulnerable moments. When you're hooked up to a machine getting pumped up with drugs, that's the moment you don't want to let people in. But by having them there, amazing. Some days were filled with laughter. They actually kind of had to put us in a room that had a door because sometimes we were loud. And some days, honestly, I just couldn't talk and I needed to be quiet and sleep. Everyone respected where I was. I'm not sure if those people know how big of a difference they made in my life, but it's trifold. I mean, 2 of them are here today still supporting me, and I'm gracious for Tricia and Sarah. But also it allowed me to shift my mindset to now know that allowing people in is a blessing. It can help in ways you never even thought possible. The other story I want to share at this is help can take many forms. It doesn't always have to be taking work off on a Wednesday to show up and take you to chemo. I work at UFG Insurance, and they have showed up for me as coworkers to help with my attitude, my mindset, and my spirit. See, in my first 12 rounds of chemo, they really wanted to be there for me. So they called the cancer center on my 6th round and my 12th round to make sure I had a window seat, because they were gonna walk and run down to that cancer center parking lot and stand in the parking lot to cheer me on. So they stood there, they cheered me on, they sang to me, I think Bon Jovi halfway there. And then at the final one, you were a champion, okay? They held signs, they posted on social media. I was truly wrapped in love. It really makes me emotional when I think about it. Then again, when I finished my 30th round, they were there to surprise me, and they helped me ring the bell with some of my best friends. These people, these coworkers, didn't have to step up, leave work. They didn't have to do that for me, but they wanted to be there in spirit and help me keep my attitude up. Again, reframing the idea of what help can look like and allowing it in. Then in August of 2023, before my last 30th round of chemo, I received a phone call from my brother that my dad had unexpectedly passed away. This crumbled me. I had just seen my dad 5 weeks before as we celebrated my 40th birthday, and he was my biggest champion and wanted to see me cross that finish line in my 30th round of chemo. It's a shock. This is my first time actually talking about it. It was bigger than anything I had been through the last 15 months of my own health, and I had been through some big things. Now I'm navigating my own health, trying to take care of myself, trying to grieve the unexpected passing of my dad, and now I am an orphan. I was an executor to an estate back in Illinois that was a mess, and honestly, my brother was not dealing with any of this well and has mental health issues, and I'm trying to support him and also continue to live. You guys, this is too much and too fast. I was 2 weeks away from my last chemo at my dad's services, and I couldn't hug a single person because I didn't want to risk getting sick. I couldn't hug anyone at my dad's services. I literally had to nope, sorry, hug my husband. This meant I had to dig deep. I had to ask for help with people in Illinois because I wasn't there every day. People I had never met because they were there, my dad knew them. People that I hadn't seen in years. But additionally, I was having to rely on my network here in Iowa again, who had given me so much for 3 years. Don't think I didn't ask multiple times a day, what the F is happening? But here's the thing. I had to know again that how I'm responding to every single situation matters. This meant not getting mad at my brother for certain things that was or was not happening. This meant that I was allowing myself to be angry and overwhelmed and frustrated and sad, but also trying to experience the joy of my last chemo, right? And celebrating that. So finding joy in grief, I had never had to do that before. I'm still navigating this. It's been 18 months since losing my dad, and I get to wear his wedding ring on my thumb today. He's with me. My mom is on my other hand. She is with me today. This is hard. I don't have all the right answers, but I'm trying my best every day to continue to be resilient in the best ways. So that brings us to today. Thank you for coming along my journey. I've shared a lot about how I've tried to be resilient over the years and how that looks, not only for myself, or how friends and partners can help other people be resilient. So show up for yourself. In those dark moments, remember, you are there, you've survived your hard days. Have grace with yourself as well, right? There are situations and seasons in life where we can only give so much. It's not the same we gave last season, but it's what we can do right now. And I've also learned and appreciated that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. The people who have surrounded me in love, support, encouragement, laughter, and grace, they're the reasons I can stand here today. I'm still continuing to be resilient. I don't have this down. I wish I could tell you there's a book for this. There's not. I looked. But what I want to leave you with today is that each and every one of us in this room has been through, we've heard about some of these, you are currently in one, or you will go through tough times. We don't always know when those curveballs are going to come at us, how fast, how big, if it's coming from over there or over there. But we can choose how we respond to them. Have grace for yourself. Lean on others. Find moments of goodness in even the tough days. I think we have the power of turning those curveballs into disco balls. And my final note, I can't leave this stage without telling you, do your self-exams. Schedule that mammogram. If it wasn't for that early detection myself, I wouldn't be on the stage with you today. Thank you.